Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today I'm at the home of another Master Gardener who has a nice collection of lavender here that was planted in November of 2021. So it's been through the full growing season of 2022. It did have a light pruning last year, mostly deadheading the first flowers, and then in fact it rebloomed, and so now we have some dead stems here where we had flowers before. Lavender is the common name. The botanical name is very similar, lavandula, so I think most folks would recognize that. It does grow best in full sun. It doesn't like to be near water, so don't put it near your sprinkler system. And these specimens are great as a teaching tool because they've been in the ground, as I say, a year and a half. And it's really important that you pay close attention to your lavender and not let it go 5 or 6 years before you start to prune it. Lavender can be a high maintenance thing and really needs to be pruned twice. So this time of year, we're coming in and we're going to head back some of the stems and give it a little shaping. And then the second pruning is really that significant reduction in the flowering stems so that you can get the rebloomers and take those off after the flowers are spent. So I have sanitized my tools. I have my hand pruners, which will probably suffice for most of what we're going to do today. I know I often say you don't really need hedge trimmers, but on the general shaping, they actually recommend that you use a hedge trimmer and give it a little shape, make it a mound, and then come in and do the fine tuning with the hand pruners. I also brought my little rake because we will want to get in here and clean out some falling leaves from the surrounding vegetation so that we can see what's going on at the base of the plant. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so I've come around to the front of the plant just for purposes of making the video. And as often is the case, I got some things poking me, so that comes off even though it's the next plant. But I'm going to focus on this plant, this lavender plant in the middle, so that we'll have a good example of one that's been pruned in between others that still need to be pruned. And I'm going to just start with these spent blossom stems, and they're small, so they just come off with hand pruners. And as the plant gets bigger and you have more and more of these, you can grab a whole handful of them like that and come in and get rid of those. And we'll just, and in this case I'm trying not to cut back into greenwood. I'm just taking that dead stem. But I want to get as much of that out as possible, and I'm sure as I continue the pruning I'll find a few where maybe I didn't go long enough. But you can reach back into the plant and take those spent stems off as low as possible. But there we've got, now there's one sticking out. There's always one more. But there I've gotten rid of most of the spent stems. So now the general rule of thumb is taking off, if you're doing this regularly, up to but not more than 1/3. And that's the general rule in all pruning. Don't take more than 1/3 of the plant. So it's not like I'm going to take everything down 1/3. I want to give it a little bit of shape in doing this. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to make, let me pick this stem in the middle here. I'm going to come in and find a branch node and take it off right there. Now I shortened that. And that's going to kind of be my guide as I come around to the ones nearby. And I want it a little wider at the bottom than at the top. And the key here, we'll come back and do another step, but as we mentioned, these things don't like to be near a lot of water, not near a sprinkler. And once we get a basic shape, then we'll come back and do some pruning for airflow and sunshine. And while I'm doing this, if I find anything that's dead, and I'm commenting because I just did. Here's a branch that's really pretty, not sure what happened to it, but it is brown. So I'm going to take that off down at a branch node, but keep the green ones around it. I need to get about 1/3 off of this in the back. And where this is situated, obviously I want the back to be a little taller, but I do need to prune it and get it to stimulate some growth. So now this is a little tall. We'll just keep coming forward. And, okay, the next thing that needs attention will be where this butts up against the next plant. We want to create a little bit of space. These are planted in a bit of a drift, but we still need airflow and sunshine. So a little bit of shaping, taking off some of the height. Now we're going to come in and start to pull apart and look at the middle. So I mentioned that lavender can be a bit of a high maintenance plant because you need to prune it twice a year. In researching to make this, I also read that it is not uncommon to have to replace your lavender in as short a period as 3 years. That's why it's important to keep it well pruned, well maintained, nice, airy, lots of sunlight. Then you might get 5 or 6 years out of it. But one of the things you can do, and it's happening here, is this lower branch has come out and attached to the ground. It tip roots is the term, and it's recommended that you put, you know, a little rock or something on, A, to hold that in place so it does continue to root, but B, and equally important, when you see the little rock there, you know, oh yeah, that's there on purpose. If you don't mark it in some way with a piece of string or yarn or something colorful, you'll forget that that's there, and someday you'll come along and accidentally remove it. So let's get on to the airflow. Even though this is a small plant, if I pull this apart, yes, we had really cold weather in December, but you can see that it's already starting to look woody. It's got this dark brown, and there's really no green leaves on these lower parts. So rule number 1 in pruning a lavender is always keep 2 to 3 inches of green on the tip of that woody stem. If I were to cut it back here in this woody stem, it will not grow new green growth. And a woody stem with no green growth on it is just going to die and may in fact trigger the death of adjacent branches. Or if you come in and you cut into the woody part very close to the bottom where you've got thicker stems, you can actually trigger the death of the plant. So that's the challenge in lavender. So as I come in here, first of all, just brushing this around has kind of moved some of the stems and gives me this false sense that I've already created a little space. But I'm going to come in here and I'm looking for anything that's already brown all the way, and I'll take that out because it just crowds the center. And some of these are the remainders of those spent blossoms. That one wants to grow back into the middle. But being a fairly young plant, we don't have a whole lot to take out here, but there's always a little bit to take out. And we're really looking to get rid of some of that brown stuff. And we should also pull this up off the ground to see what's going on with these lower stems. And if we've got lower branches that have completely browned out, then we should take those off too. So as I come around, I'm particularly looking for things on the outside that want to grow back into the middle. And the other thing you can do, if in fact, well, that one's all dead, but here's one that wants to grow back into the middle. When I take that off, I could clean that up and then propagate it and get another lavender plant, if you're into propagating your own. So let me keep going here. And I do want to keep just a slight demarcation between this plant and the plant adjacent to it. That's all brown. That's brown. And these stems that I'm taking out are all very small in diameter. None of them are particularly big, but yep, I almost snipped the one that we were tip rooting. Good thing the rock was there. So I think, yep, that one's brown. So I'll take that off back there. And I would say this is starting to look a little thin, but part of it is just from the manipulation that I've been doing. We'll shorten that one. And now I really just want to get rid of anything else that's dead brown. And sometimes you can just take your fingers and run down the stem, and if they're dead, they will just break off very easily. And okay, there's one that we may want to tip root going back that way. So we'll do that when we're finished. But I think we've got this one mostly done. And then I'll take my little hand rake and pull some of this debris out from underneath. So let me get out of the way. Let's pause for a moment. So I have a very small pile of debris, but then again, this is still a relatively young plant, but I can look down into this and I can see some empty space, which is what I want. I can see the delineation between this plant and this one. You can see the delineation between this plant and the adjacent one. And then this one's going to need some pruning because it wants to creep in here on this one. So that's it. But the key, I think, on lavender is to do that twice a year pruning, this shaping and cutting back no more than a third, keeping at least 2 inches of green above where the woody part starts, and then removing the spent flowers after they've faded so that you can get a second bloom in the fall. Again, take a look at the handout. We've got a picture of what a more mature shrub looks like. We've got a great picture of what the really woody stuff looks like, and the easy way that you can just grab a whole cluster of the spent blossom stems and take them off after the flowers have faded. So, hope you learned something today. Thank you for joining us. So we went ahead and this is the one that was the focus of the video, but we went ahead and we pruned this one in front and this one in back, and we found a couple more stems that are worth laying down to try and propagate again. And we just want you to see how these three look kind of nice and airy, and then we'll pan over here where there are more that still need to be pruned. And then we'll just come back and you can see the difference. You can see that these are thicker, fuller. We still have the spent flower stems. Here are the 3 that we did. And then on this side, there's also 4 more that need to be done. So just a good show and tell of, this is the before pruning and this is the after pruning. And you really do want to get that airflow and sunshine into the middle of the plant and keep it as healthy as you can for as long as you can. And twice a year pruning. Late winter, as it's coming out of dormancy, you do the thinning and the cutting back a couple inches. And then after the first flowers are spent, you deadhead those and get a second bloom. So that's it in a nutshell for lavender.